Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Amherst Women's Club. Here we are on Zoom today, and I'm happy to see so many people. Today's topic, what's in the works? The new elementary school building, the Jones Library restoration and building project, and other major Amherst capital projects. Our speakers are Kathy Schoen, Town Councillor and Chair of the Elementary School Building Committee, Alex Lefevre, Chair of the Library Trustees Building and Facilities Committee, and our own Dorothy Pam, Town Councillor and Chair of the Town Services Committee. Dorothy Pam is an Amherst Town Councillor for District 3, now Chair of the Town Services and Outreach Committee. She teaches communications, theater, and English, most recently at Hoyo Community College, formerly at Hostos Community College, City University of New York. She's a member of the Amherst Women's Club, where she serves on the Program Committee, Ways and Means Committee, and Ad Hoc House Restoration Committee. I'm now going to turn the program over to Dorothy, and she will introduce our guests.
Good morning. Our first speaker is Alex Lefevre, and she's a trustee of the Jones Library, serving as clerk to the board, as well as chair of the Trustees Building and Facilities Committee, library representative of the Joint Capital Planning Committee, JCPC, and member of the Jones Library Building Committee, JLBC. Alex spent her career specializing in professional liability insurance for Fortune 500 financial institutions. In addition to her trustee work at the library, she spent the last 7 years as an active volunteer at the Amherst Survival Center, as an English language partner working to resettle refugee families, and volunteering at the Crocker Farm Elementary, where she runs a community bread program. Alex.
Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for having me here today to provide a quick update on the Jones Library expansion and renovation project. I'm going to be as brief as possible because I think most people want to spend the bulk of the time today talking about the elementary school building projects. So we at the library are very excited to be moving forward with this incredibly important project for our community that has been almost a decade in the works. Over the next 12 months, the project will move into the design the design development phase. And to understand what this means, it's important to understand the two phases that precede where we are today. So for any major building project, there are typically 6 phases of design. So the first phase of any design project is the program development. And the main goal during this phase is to figure out how much space you need for today, how much you're going to need for the future, and then how that space should be used, organized, and arranged. And for the library, this was the creation of our building program. The second phase is schematic design. So in that phase, the design team or the architects take the program requirements, and then they begin the process of translating them into an efficient building design. In November of 2021, the town approved via a vote moving forward with the building project for the library based on the schematic design. And at that time, a new town committee was formed. So not a Jones Library Committee, but a town committee, and that's the Jones Library Building Committee. The charge of that committee is to oversee the design and construction of the library project. The makeup of the committee is the town manager, town finance director, 1 town councillor, the director of the library, the director of the facilities of the library, 2 trustees, of which I am one, as well as 2 members of the community. 1 member with experience in architecture and 1 member with experience in community outreach. So we began meeting as a committee, a town committee, on December 14th of 2021. So it's a relatively new committee, and we are now meeting bi-weekly and will continue to meet bi-weekly as needed. So that brings us to where we are today, which is the 3rd phase, or design development. This phase will take approximately 12 months and is scheduled to be completed in February of 2023. So during this phase, the building's exterior, so in this case, the new addition to the library,
will be more fully designed. Interior layouts will be completed, room sizes will be finalized, and most of the building materials will be selected. And this phase, like prior phases, includes outreach to and input from the community. It also will involve working with the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners and the Massachusetts Historical Commission to review and approve the final designs once we're at that point. So once the design is finalized, the next or fourth phase in a project is construction documents. And this phase basically takes design development drawings and specifications, and it fills in all the details that enable you to go out to bid and have contractors bid on the project, which is the fifth phase, is the bidding. Construction, which is the sixth and final phase, is scheduled to begin in June of 2023, with the library opening in the spring of 2025. During the construction phase of the project, the Jones Library building will be closed. The library is required by law to continue to provide library services, as well as to provide access to the community of our entire collection. When and how our temporary library services will be provided is part of the design development phase and will be fleshed out over the next year so that we're prepared for that once we're ready to close. In terms of cost, as many of you may know, to help defray the cost of the building project, the library trustees applied for and received a $13.9 million state grant. The grant is awarded in 5 equal installments of $2.78 million. The first installment was paid in November to the town upon approval of the project. In addition to the state grant, the trustees also agreed to fundraise $6.6 million of the project. And although that fundraising campaign has not officially begun, I'm happy to report that the Friends Development Committee has raised to date 38% of that goal, or almost $2.5 million. So we are all very excited to move into the design development phase of the project. We look forward to continuing to work with the community to preserve our historic 1928 building, and also to create a new library building that truly serves everyone in our community. And I think we're going to hear about the building project next, and then if people have questions that they want to ask specifically, we'll do that at the end. Okay, thank you.
I'm introducing now Kathy Shane, our main speaker. She's an Amherst Town Councillor for District 1, Vice Chair of the Town Finance Committee, Chair of the JCPC, the Joint Capital Planning Committee, and Chair of the Elementary School Building Committee, ESBC. Trained as an economist, Kathy worked for more than 40 years on pressing public concerns prior to the council, including healthcare reform. One of her top priorities on the Town Council is to shepherd a new elementary school from design to completion in a way that garners wide support due to its strong educational program and a building that incorporates flexibility and climate-sensitive construction. So here's Kathy.
Thank you, Dorothy, and thank you everyone for having me here. Alex couldn't have laid out a clearer timeline. If you think of her framework for the school, we are going through the same timeline, only we are at the very beginning. The elementary school project has to be initially approved by the school committee, and then through the town council, we propose to a state granting authority what we intend on doing. And right now we're on the road to consolidating the Wildwood and Fort River elementary schools into one school. So we would be down to 2 elementary schools, Crocker and Wildwood. The school committee voted to move the 6th grade up to the middle school. So this new or renovated school will house children grades kindergarten through 5th grade. It'd be about 575 children is the estimate of the size. And as I said, we're at the beginning, because what we will be looking at as a school building committee and as a town and we hope everyone will get involved as we move through this path, is where are we going to build? We have a choice of either the Wildwood Elementary School site or the Fort River site. And when I say new, it can be a renovated and expanded building or a brand new building. And those decisions are still to come. Right now, we're at the beginning phase where the size of the building itself has to house the education programs we envision for our children. We've held a series of visioning sessions, both with the community and with teachers and staff working in the program. Plus, we had an early project, the Wildwood Project, where a lot of visioning, what do we want in a school? What programs do we want there? What capacity do we want a school to be if we're talking about a school that's going to last at least 50 years, hopefully longer, so we don't have to tear down another one. But we're really looking at a 21st century education where we know people want to work in teams, in clusters. We merge in art and music in a project-oriented study fashion, and all these are part of an education plan that the schools have developed. And we have our special populations, severely disabled children, learning challenged children, they will be in the school. And all of this feeds into how big does the building have to be, how many square feet. That is where we are right now, and the school committee tomorrow night will be looking at the first draft of the education program and the first draft of an up to this size building. Those are not final decisions. We will then be looking from March through June at where it will be and whether it's going to be an addition and renovation or whether it will be an all new building. The other piece of the school project that makes it particularly exciting, beyond an already exciting project to start thinking what the climate is our children will be learning in, is that we have in Amherst a net zero bylaw, which requires any new building to move off carbon fuels, fossil fuels, and move into generating enough electricity, energy to offset its operating costs, which is why net zero. So this building will be built to be all electric. It will have photovoltaic and potentially geothermal systems built in, and it will be built with a structure where the walls are heavily insulated, the roof is thought through, the buildings are thought through, with daylight streaming into the classrooms. So we have both a green design for the building, as Dorothy originally mentioned, and educational aspirations. And I must say, if any of you get a chance to tour our current elementary schools, either Wildwood or Fort River, they are identical in the actual structural design. And then go visit some elementary schools that have been built more recently. And I've had the privilege of seeing a few, and we will be going to several more. What you see is much more flexible space than we have. Daylight lit in every classroom where you may or may not even have to turn the lights on because on a beautiful day, the light is streaming through. Libraries that are the hub of the classrooms, and hub of the learning center where you can easily go in and out. They have project space in them, flexible space, art rooms with adequate supply rooms, and groups for small groups to break out, including using hallways instead of just a long hallway where nothing is in it. Breakout spaces, and I watch small groups of students working with their teachers, all in elementary schools. Brilliantly lit with lots of art everywhere for people to look at. And we're using the outdoor space to teach in, to use as a way of learning about climate, but also take classes outside. All of this is starting to be a vision for Amherst on what our schools could be for our children, because children learn better in spaces that are not noisy, that have light, that are heated or air conditioned appropriately, and we don't have that in our current schools now. So where will we go next? Alex described a series of steps the library took. We'll first be talking about several possible options, equally weighted, pricing them out. If we did this way, did this that way. And then over the course of between March and June, we'll make a decision on the preferred option. Then we move into what she already described as a schematic design, which The preferred option is just where it's going to be built. Is it an all-new building or is it an ad reno? Then we go to what's inside the building. What does it look like? Where is the library? Where is the gym? What clusters do we have to make the school feel, although it will house 575 children, it will feel small, scaled to the size of elementary school children. One of the teachers said, can you make sure that the furniture fits the kids? Which is an eye-opening question for a teacher to ask because we don't have that now. But what I see in other schools is desks that are movable can be recombined, furniture that's movable, and different height, because a kindergartner and a fifth grader aren't the same size. We then go into that phase, and when we get enough of what the building will look like, what it will have, it gives us enough information to put a price tag on it. That we're hoping to have by the end of this year. It has to come to the town council, and then it will be going out to the voters. We don't have enough money, as far as we can see right now, unless we get some very big donations from the state and the federal government to build it out of our own resources, even with that. So that we'll be going out to the voters for support for something called a debt exclusion, which is where the voters are, for the duration of the project, increasing their taxes. That's down the road. By the time we're there, we will know what this looks like. We can be doing what Alex can now do for the Jones Library, show you pictures of what it'll look like. And I think I'll stop with that because there may be, we're already getting lots of questions. When are you making which decision? How do we know when to come to meetings? There will be multiple community forums posted and everyone is welcome. When we get to the actual, the building and what's in it, there will be small group focus groups moving building blocks around. Literally, probably the kids will be moving blocks around. Suppose this is here and there. We have a fantastic design team that has built multiple elementary schools and gets nothing but rave reviews, whose whole focus is on the education that's going to go on in the building and what the building can do to support that. And I think I'll stop just to take questions. Back and forth. What?
I'm gonna do a little bit about DPW and fire, then we have questions.
Okay, and I didn't do what Alex said, so I can do it when I come back on, describe who this building committee is, but I think that's minutia compared to the big picture.
All right, so you have heard some really interesting details about the new school and the restored library. I'm going to mention briefly two other major capital projects which we cannot do at this time, but which are definitely on our plate and we're thinking about. And that is fire department and DPW. The reason we're not doing them now is partly a question of timing and also a question of finding the right place. The fire department, which is the central building, has been there a very long time, and 1929. And of course, the new trucks don't fit in it, so we have to get them special ordered from France. And it doesn't have provisions for female fire workers and female EMTs. It does not have what it needs, but the town has decided they know where the place for it to be. It's the present DPW space. They want to move the central fire station a little bit south so that it can have quicker response time to South Amherst. And now it has more than 6,500 EMS and fire calls every year. I'm still old-fashioned. I think of fire department, I think of fires, but really what it is our emergency medical response team, and they do a tremendous job, and they are very, very important to the town of Amherst and to UMass. So we can't go ahead until we find a new place for DPW, and that's a large, large department, town department. And there's our committee and people who've been dedicated to this for 20 years. They still have not found the right place for DPW. When that is found, we then move DPW to the new place, and then we move fire and build a new fire. So by that time, we hopefully will have paid for the library and the school, or be well on our way to doing it, because these are two extremely important departments for the town. So I thought I would tell you about DPW today by just talking about a regular day, and I'll take my day today. Okay, so you get up in the morning and you take a shower, you use the bathroom sink, you brush your teeth, use the toilet. Well, that's clean, that's water, and that's DPW and wastewater treatment. Go to the kitchen and there's a recycling bin, and you also want to get some good clean water from your faucet. So you have what goes in your recycling bin, that's going to go to the solid waste, the transfer station. So I've already been very involved with DPW. If it weren't there, let me tell you, my day would not have been as nice. That I can trust the water, that I can take a shower, that I know that everything is going to go and be treated well. So then I walk out my door, and I'm on Amity Street, and right there I have a sidewalk. Oh, that's DPW. And I've got a road, and that's DPW. And I've got trees, street trees, and that's DPW. And in fact, not just 2 years ago, we had quite an adventure when we had a blockage in the connector pipe between our sewage pipeline going out the front door and the one that goes under the street. And DPW does, of course, the connections to the individual houses. Some of the pipe is responsibility of the homeowner, but the overall system, that is DPW. So I got in my car and I drove on the street. And in terms of snow and ice, oh, they had cleared the road and it was safe. And I come up and what do I see? I have a crosswalk. Oh, they do crosswalks. And then I go a little further and it's a traffic light. They do traffic lights. They do the lines that go down the middle of the road. Over to the right, I have the greens. They do greens. They do the parklands. They had a wonderful role in helping design the new playground at Kendrick Park and the water park at Groff Park. So they've been very, very busy in providing us with wonderful places for our entertainment. And then I'm looking and facing Town Hall. That's the town building. They're in charge of keeping track of town buildings and keeping them up to date and keeping all the equipment repaired. And Kathy likes to count how many trucks and vehicles that they have in their inventory, and it's just a little under 100. And they have to keep these running and getting parts and getting inspected and doing all of the things that we need to have. So in terms of the water, which is one of my pet interests, we have 4 water reservoirs, 3 water storage tanks, 3 water treatment systems, 5 water wells, and 120 miles to distribute it. So you can see that DPW is its absolutely central thing, and we've never built a new DPW. In the 1940s, they refitted a 1915 trolley barn, which is on South Pleasant Street. And recently, they conducted tours for some of the new town councillors, and I decided I'd come along and just see it. And if you're interested in archaeology and old buildings, you can see some of the original features where the ceiling is open. It's picturesque, but it is not an efficient space for a department that is, from my point of view, my little trip with you this morning, is absolutely central to the quality of life in Amherst. So we are very deep into the school and deep into the library, but I just want you to keep in mind, we will get to DPW and fire. And the fire station will reflect the fact that we have females who are EMTs and fire department people, and there are no provisions for them in our old building. So there's a lot of work that we have to do. So now I'm going to turn it over to questions. And is it possible to have both Kathy and Alex seated kind of at a distance without their masks up here at the same time?
If you all think they are agreeable with it,
Thank you.
you have to be probably the most dangerous person in the room, but a German person. So Charlie, I guess people will ask questions to you and you will answer them. Okay, well,
How far can we be until the meeting? Yeah, exactly. Are we still visible for you for this part from each other?
can you see your hands? In the,
I don't want to be the elementary school germ bringing person that brings down our town council.
Okay, if you have any questions from the audience, the Zoom audience, please go ahead and raise your hand or type them in the chat. I can speak for you. Okay, I saw Catherine Lombardi first. Go ahead, Catherine. I'll unmute you and then you can ask the question.
Unmute. There I go. Okay. The library is further along, so we have an idea of when things will be torn up around and when they'll be back together again, but not the school. So my question is about the school. Any ideas, any plans of how long this will take, assuming no major problems, and when will we have a new school?
I think I heard that. So you're asking when will we have a school?
Yeah.
The current timeline, if we're on a rapid track to getting a design for school, I said we have to pick a site, then design it. If that's approved, then it goes out the same process Alex described. We have to go from the design concept to very specific and do construction bids. The hope is that it will open in 2026. The fall of 2026, the school committee said, can you get it open sooner? And they said, it's possible to be in early 2026, but it will take a while to build this. The other thing I should say about that timeline, I visited one school the designers have done, and they were able to build in this case, it was a brand new school right next to the existing school. So, and literally like 8 feet away. That meant they could move faster because they didn't have to take part of the school down, move children. We'll have occupied schools. We have no place. Alex said the library service will continue to operate someplace else. We do not have any place to move our children and our teachers to another space. So if we go the all new route, the timeline can be shorter if we can design it in a way around the space. So that's a question of what site. If we do add reno, it will have to be longer, but it can be done. So we're in the hope is by 2026, and I said either early or by middle, and that's the trajectory we're on if all the other steps happen.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next is Donna Kircher. Go ahead, Donna. Unmute yourself.
Okay, am I unmuted?
Yeah.
No. Okay. I was wondering, I mean, we're living in tough times, whether issues of security are changing in the school designs. You know, around the DC area, they've had some issues with, you know, violent invasions of schools. Is that part of the design nowadays? I mean, we're in a difficult climate, and I was just wondering.
I didn't hear whether she's asking about the school.
School security.
Are you designing school? Okay, so yeah, so the answer on security is as the granting authority actually requires, but we would anyway, that any new school, whether it's a major renovation or brand new, has to have completely secure entrances and has to be secured throughout the schools as just for pure safety. And we don't have that in our current schools. So the design would take that into account. What I've seen in a few of the schools I've gone into is schools have done that in different ways. Some have you enter the school, you get buzzed in, and there's a very welcoming open desk, an administrative desk, so you don't feel like you've entered into a prison where you can't get another step, but you can't get to the next place without being signed in or being welcomed. But the same schools have said we want to be able to be used after hours for like a polling station or an after hours program. So they built ways of having doorways inside the school that can shut off the classrooms so you can get access to the library, you can get access to the cafeteria, which often have a stage, a performance spot, without going through the whole school. So the design is both safety, thinking of community use after school or during school, and protecting the students. All the doors, the teachers' doors, to the extent there was an emergency, can lock. And in one school, the teachers had fobs, and another, the doors were wide open, but if they needed to, they could be closed and locked. So safety is being built is being built into any new school that's being renovated or built in the state of Massachusetts with any grant funds.
Okay, any other questions from the Zoom audience?
I hope all the safety is not electronic. I want to have systems that can, safety systems that can operate if all the power is out.
I will give an uneducated answer to that. So what I saw in different schools, the answer was yes, some have generator backups. And the ways the doors lock for the internal space are not electric. You know, you can just close the door and lock the door. So it's not just a push a switch and the doors are locked. You know, touring some of the new schools is both an eye-opener for me, because I haven't been to elementary schools for a really long time. My children are 42 and 37, but the wide open spaces, but the ability to use them flexible, as well as to shut doors off, or this is the classroom space, this is the music space. The incredibly beautiful design of cafeterias with a stage, which have acoustics, but they can use them for assemblies as well as lunchrooms, and they can use it for the music room when kids aren't eating in there. So thinking of, let's design a school that's got flexible spaces rather than it's only designed for one thing. Because we know the world will be different into the future. One question, just as I build on that thought, as we got during the community forum, is the ability to use the out of doors as a place to conduct classes, but also study climate. That is also being done in school designs now, where teachers want to take their kids outside. But if we succeed in building a net zero school, it's going to be a model school, and as children can learn from it. They can watch, how does this work? How do these systems work? And it becomes a way of having the next generation that goes beyond us, knowing a lot more about climate change and climate control than we do now, making it part of the curriculum.
Question.
I have a question regarding our public works and the fact that was postponed for a while because of school and library. When we can expect that our public works will be in a better position to get what they need?
I'm going to ask Kathy to answer that.
All right, she's turning to me because I'm on the finance committee also of the town. You know, as Dorothy said, for public works and the fire station, we're still in the search for a good place for public works to move to. We don't, unlike the library and the school, there is no current granting authority at the state level that helps us build this. So we are also saying we only want to spend this much money for each of those buildings. And if we have to buy land for DPW, that price has to be part of the building. So answering the when is we have to find the land, then we have to come up with a design that comes in within the price tags we've done. The one last thing, this is from my insider knowledge, is when DPW goes to move away from its current site, that was a trolley borne station for years before DPW came in there. We've had DPW there, and there's likely contaminants in the soil, you know, when you go down. So there will have to be some site work to make it safe for the next building to go in there. So we've got a lot of time, and the timeline really is contingent on finding the land. So Dorothy said it's likely going to be after the library and the school. It could move faster, depending on what we find.
They are very important that looking at our streets and the potholes that are in every street of Amherst, we really need to give them some priority. That's my humble opinion.
No, and you're right. And the thing about DPW, as opposed to the schools, is we still will get street repair. The building is falling apart and we need to fix it, but they can go out and fix the building. So we need to build them a safer, cleaner place. It's falling apart. Fortunately, they're not like teachers where looking at leaks coming through the ceiling, or there's no heating or there's no air conditioning, depending on which system is broken down. So you're absolutely right. We need to support our staff there because they do an amazing amount of work for us in a way that's often quite invisible, that they're out there protecting us and making it possible for us to go around our days.
The land that is in front of that on South Pleasant Street, in front of the old trolley building, is that not large enough to accommodate?
It's apparently not the actual physical space where DPW is. It's a fantastic question. I asked it as a brand new counselor, can't we get both of them in there? And the answer is no, because of the amount of equipment that DPW has. So you might be able to get a fire station with its ambulances and there, and you might be able to get another office building there, but there's no room for the rest of it. And DPW has in its building now, it repairs its own trucks. So it has so you want to have staff near the place. They don't have to have all their vehicles on the same site, so we could split storage space from this, but it's not big enough for a core function of them now to get them both on.
Okay.
Unfortunately, yeah, because that would be an easy solution if we had, a few more acres.
And DPW wants to put more of its trucks and vehicles undercover in the winter. Right now, many of them are just sitting there.
Right, so there is issues. Right now, they're pretty much all on site. They have a couple off-site places where there's some on War Memorial Pool. They have some storage. That physical space, Dorothy, it's not as much of an issue as the building is, because right now, if we wanted to, we could build a metal flimsy structure to protect them, but putting that money into the current site doesn't make sense if we're moving. So we could get fairly cheap, but there's just a big problem because it's such a big operation. In the building are desk workers, engineers, but there's also all the people who come in and out. They have to clean themselves out after taking care of our sewers for us. So you need to have bathroom and cleaning facility for humans. So the building has a complex range of functions to it.
Can the town ever take property by eminent domain? For example, there are 2 houses there that are rental properties.
The answer is yes, we can. We pay for them. So what I don't know, the person who could talk at length about this is Lynn Griesmer, the president of the council, because she's been on the DPW fire station committee for years. But my belief is they've looked at every possible option. So that would have been, could they have just gotten more land? And they looked at other sites. Could you move the fire station just a little bit further south? And then you want to still be able to serve people to the north of the central fire station. Our other one is up in North Fire Station. So they're trying to be within a few minutes response, particularly for ambulances. So there's been a lot of search. There was one potential site for DPW in South Amherst, but there was a wetland issue. There was a community issue of open lands with trucks that are coming in and out with lights all the time. So they're trying to find a place that doesn't disturb the neighborhood. As the trucks go in and out all night long.
And wetlands. I think of the house she's thinking of. We looked at it connected to DPW, and I think it was too many wetlands around.
And so we've got this. But anyone who is walking around outside right now, if you didn't know that Amherst has a lot of wetlands, you would know it now.
I grew up on South Pleasant Street, and it's loaded with springs just everywhere.
I drove around Pomeroy's Bridge. I couldn't believe to my eyes that area in front or behind the golf course. So much water. Trees are really brown. It's amazing how much water we got.
And and that's one of the things with the school we're have to take a really close look at Fort Riverside, because it is flat. It's near a floodplain. So now's not the best time to be looking at it, but you want to look at it at the worst time, actually. You want to look at it at its worst before you spend a lot of money to build a building on it.
raises the cost of construction.
So, question, Alex, did you find that there are two things that you want to add to what you said about the library?
Do you want me to add? I think exactly what I said, but if you want me to elaborate, I'm happy to.
I was just thinking that the question of net zero.
Sure, sure.
I believe the library was not required to do it, but
Correct.
that's part of the plan. If you want to mention something about that.
So little history on the net zero bylaw. The group who actually initially wrote and brought to town meeting the net zero bylaw actually approached the library, and we had a discussion that the net zero bylaw would not apply to the Jones Library building because the building itself is actually owned by the Jones Library Inc., which is a nonprofit, but that we need to do everything to get as close as we could to net zero. And so as a result, we created a sustainability committee that was made up of fantastic individuals who do various aspects of sustainability for living, and sort of set them loose on what their priorities would be. We went back through systematic design and updated designs so that the building is net zero ready. And so what that means is that we are not able to produce the electricity we need on site, because if we were to put solar panels on the 1928 portion of the building, I think everyone, well, one, we can't, but two, I don't think anyone would approve of that. But the building, the efficiency in the building is such that were we to purchase electricity off-site in a renewable manner, we would be a net zero building.
I have a comment regarding solar panels. So, being technical person, solar panels increase their efficiency in last 20 years significantly, but that percent is still very low. In other words, solar panels are very efficient from the technical point of view still. And our state that invested so much in solar farms that you see all of the place surrounding Amherst, I think it's too early for such solar farms. Panels are not efficient enough. But as a consolation, maybe, of that infrastructure made when they have more efficient panels may allow a replacement to be the more efficient. But unfortunately, the state of the art of technology is not yet there. The voltaic cells you are talking about are still in the laboratory. I mean, those are very efficient ones.
And that's a perfect segue, a link to the advantage the school has as we look at it compared to with the library, where they have a historic building, they have to preserve it in the middle of town. We all want them to preserve it. We can think in terms of what the building is in the beginning. And so the engineers who are working with the design team have emphasized the envelope of the building itself is critical. And what's the floor like? What's the ceiling? How are the windows designed? And what are your high-back systems like? So to the extent we are able to do geothermal, it's an efficient way of heating the building and zones in the building. And then the next thing is, how do people use the building? So the schools, the lights go off when you leave the room. So the lights are still on.
Yeah.
Not all the plugs are activated all the time with the drain, and the kids are, so all of those mean that you need less PV to offset the electrical costs, so it's going down on how do you get to that last step of where is your renewable coming from?
I assume that people know that UMass built now maybe 10 years ago their net zero building. That is one building on the left-hand side when we are going towards UMass before the big sign, University of Massachusetts. And that was the first building at UMass built with the use of geothermal energy. So it seems that they were first pioneers, at least in Amherst, doing that. So University of Massachusetts is doing all kinds of this improvements regarding the conservation of energy and also introducing the so-called green sources. But I can also say that in Department of Polymer Science, where I'm still affiliated, is working on these photovoltaic materials that are, as I can tell you, still on the laboratory bench. So the efficiency of those cells is critical, and that is the goal of those people who are working in the applied research, trying to improve that. And that means better and more efficient use of solar energy. In other words, more electric power that we are getting from sun.
Want to check one more time for questions?
Okay, any other questions from the Zoom audience, please?
Thank you for coming very much. We appreciate all the information you've given us. And we offer you an Amherst Women's Club mug to have your coffee.
And as just a closing comment, I will send to the conveners the website for the school building project, because as I mentioned, there will be community forums coming up. And as we move closer to making critical decisions, I think that's when it will be, we're trying to get information out to the community before we make a decision, so people can say, why are you making that decision, or what else do they want to know? But particularly with your knowledge of photovoltaic and thinking of where we're going, really building a school for the future in multiple ways, staying informed. So if there's a website that will be upcoming meetings, the frequently asked questions. And we at first had no questions and no answers. Now we have questions and answers up, but we're trying to be as transparent as possible, since it's going to be a big decision for the town.
We'll look forward to getting that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you for this.
All right.
Yes, it's very important how to build a school that is going to go 50 years ahead.